Welcome to Concerning the Spiritual in Art, a podcast exploring spirituality, consciousness, and the creative process. I'm your host, Martin Benson. All right, y'all, I got a really special episode for you today with the infamous Jean-Claude, aka Guleus E'Xavier, aka G, an incredible artist based in Lexington, Kentucky. He's a graphic designer. He is also a fine artist, making incredibly powerful collages and drawings and paintings. And he's also studying to get his license in art therapy as well. And our discussion today was really centered on this idea of healing, the idea of our own healing journeys and how we have to become really engaged in our own healing process, but also in this idea of using art as a vehicle for our own transformation and for our healing as well. We talked a lot about his own personal history and his journey for his own healing and how art played such a significant role in that, but also what it means to be an artist in this sort of world we're living in today, and how we can play that role for helping others on their healing journey through the work that we do. So it's just a really inspired conversation, one that's really left me feeling so good inside and so sort of hopeful and just inspired for the future, and also more cognizant of my own healing journey. I'm going to be thinking a lot over the next few days just about the personal journey I've been on in healing myself and how art has played a pivotal role for me as well. So he's just a really powerful, magnetic, and also super humble and down to earth human being who just had a lot of beauty and wisdom to share with us. So I hope you all really enjoy it out there. So here you go, infamous Jean-Claude, aka Guleus E'Xavier, aka G, my new real good friend. Enjoy the conversation, y'all. Peace. All right, Guleus, aka the infamous Jean-Claude. Welcome to the
Yes, sir.
podcast, man. Good
What's
morning. How
going
are
on?
you?
Doing well, doing well. Kind of a shaky morning when it comes to like just waking up and get myself like charged for the day, but overall feel good and I feel well, man.
Nice, man. Yeah, I gotta find every day we gotta ease into the day a little differently depending on the day before, or how we slept or whatever happened. We got to be sensitive and take our time entering into this world. I feel like sometimes I have a little kid, I have a 4-year-old, and sometimes he
Uh,
doesn't let that happen.
right, right,
He's ready to rock and roll at 6:30,
right,
man. Well,
right.
I'm super grateful to be here and share space with you. And I'm really interested in a lot of aspects to your art making, because I know you're a designer, graphic designer, illustrator, but you're also making these incredibly epic collages, these neoglyphs and paintings. I mean, you kind of do so many things. And one component to your work that really drew me into it is this idea of healing, and how healing has really driven your creative process and sort of help align you in your career as an artist. And I was wondering if we could start off maybe talking about like what that means for you, in terms of like how we can use our creativity, our creative outputs as a form of healing ourselves.
Yes. For me, growing up, I've always been somewhat of a sociable introvert. I've always
Mm.
had space where I just need to be by myself. I didn't really get those elements when I was younger, so it kind of made me feel like an outcast. But what I would do, I would like connect with art. That gave me a space of like imagination, but also just like getting those thoughts of like overwhelmness or I guess formed anger, whatever you want to call it, onto the paper, canvas, whatever I was using at the time. And before I really knew it was healing me, it was healing me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Just different colors I was using, the way I was doing the line work, what I was drawing. It was very abstract, even back then, but not as powerful as it is now. But because I've gotten to a balanced space of what I do, but back then I was just drawing just things I felt resonated with me to like make sure I didn't just get too overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I just always felt, why am I different? I think some people get, especially if you're a creative, you get to that point, it's like people are cool with me, but like they're still like, why is G by itself? Why what they it makes you question yourself.
Mm.
most of the time, being an individual is one of the most powerful things you can be. A lot of people follow other people to like show they're accepted, but just really honing in your space and knowing that you can do things by yourself. People gravitate or inspired by that without saying it. A lot of times they'll project what they can't do on top of what you're doing. So
Yeah, man.
something I learned over time is that just be yourself.
Yeah,
It's one of the most powerful things that you can do. And I think what kept me going is even though people would always say things like, you're weird or why are you by yourself and stuff like that, they would still be like, your art's cool. So
yeah.
I was like, I have something, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like there's something powerful about what I'm doing. I was blessed with this gift. I know, well, I didn't know, but I know that it was healing me and
Yeah,
keeping me give me a foundation to like make sure I'm just comfortable within. It also showed that people see what you got because the art is part of you.
for
Um,
sure. I
it's
agree with
just
that.
an element that you can't really express vocally sometimes, but they can see like your thought process and just in a different way. So it's always been something that I've had even as a little kid. My parents told me a story. When I was in kindergarten, where the teacher was like, draw a fire truck, and most
Mhm.
kids typically, they said everybody had the square as a truck with the circle, and they got to my picture. I had the dog, I had the fire hose, I had like everything. They're like, okay, like he's got something going on. There's
Yeah,
the creative element in his body. So
that's
from that
so cool.
age, I was blessed with parents who like didn't force, but also push that perspective on me. If there was like an art class and I wanted to go, they let me go. There was a
Yeah,
carving class, whatever. They asked me, "You want to do it?" And they opened the space for me to do it. So I was blessed who parents who nurtured that gift for me, and didn't never stifle it. As a creative, and I'm super blessed that they opened that space for me.
yeah, man. It's so special to have that support, from the people you love. A
Yeah.
lot of times, like, we can have this idea about like what we think our parents want from us,
Mm,
and in some circumstances the parent role can come in and be forceful and try to create the kids in their own image, as
mhm,
opposed to holding space and guiding them to discover themselves, and that is always a blessing, especially when you're gifted with such creativity
mm,
from such a young age. Like, to be able to nurture that is essential. I feel like I can totally relate to what you're saying. This idea of being both like sociable but like introverted, like I personally look at myself in that way in some sense. Like, this, I have this extroverted quality. Like, I can be extroverted, but I need my introversion too, kind of
I
like
need
an
to re-
ambi.
I need to like I didn't understand these, I guess, these terms or whatever, until I
Yeah.
got older and just did like, I guess, research and just finding things that resonated with me. Is like I need to recharge.
Yeah.
I didn't get it because like I'll be around people and I'm cool, but then I'll get home like, why am I so tired, man? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? And then I'll figure it out. Like just like my body and just my space as a person just absorbed a lot of energy.
Yes,
'Cause
exactly.
I didn't know how to protect it sometimes.
Hmm.
I just let people in because I guess I've always been like a thinker and like
Mm.
a empathetic person. Just like I guess because we'll get into that I guess later, but like just going through my story and certain things, I've been able to open up a space of like even if somebody was being mean or whatever, I'm like, what is going on with them beyond that I don't know.
Yeah, man.
So I would like, even though like I didn't get it sometimes, I'll just be like, okay, they're yelling at me, but what got them to that point and wanted to get mad at me when I'm not yelling? Maybe something's going
Hmm.
on at home. Maybe they had a bad day at work. Maybe
Yeah.
so I will like mentally break that down. So I think even though people would get mad at me, I'll see them again and they would just shift because like
Yeah.
I want to be mad at you, but
I
there's
can't.
something. Yeah, it's like what's going on, man? So
Oh man, those are
uh,
such important questions to
yeah,
ask,
yeah,
toward, humans. Like, we get so caught up in our projections about what we think is going on. And then
mm,
we base our emotional response or reactivity to our own projection of that person's circumstance. It's like a whole weird mind game. It's like
Right.
a house
Right.
of mirrors we play with. So
Right.
just even like you like asking yourself that question, I think automatically shifts the energy in your consciousness. And I think people can feel that, even
Yeah.
if they can't put their fingerprint on it, it's so important. And yeah, the draining feeling, like, I think about it as an energetic exchange, and people who are more empathic and really sensitive to other people's energies, and who are kind of just like resonating and receptive on these subtler levels, they if you don't protect your energy and know how to set boundaries with your energy, you can be drained by others. They can just drain you of your energy. And that's why you feel like you need that like quiet space.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's something you learn as you mature, like as you've
Mm.
gotten older, you as you become more conscious of these qualities that you have in your energetic sensitivity, you learn how to protect it and protect your boundaries. You know what I mean?
And
Um,
I think also for me is a lot of times in my solitude, it gave me a lot of like self-awareness, but also like being a my own personal therapist. So like what's going
mhm.
on? Like I can add this, I can take this away. This might work for who I am in my journey. Just a lot of reflection. Sometimes that can be too much. I will say that.
Yeah.
But I think it's good to have solitude and just understand that you're just a human trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
Um, but it's also important if things get out of hand to get an outside perspective outside of your family and friends, because there's a lot of bias when it comes to
Yeah.
friends because they want to they know you,
Yeah.
so it's good to have somebsomebody that's on the outside looking in, just with a more a clinical but also unbiased perspective.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Definitely. Because it's interesting, like the people that we love the most, like our family members, our really close friends that we've known for many, many, many years, have
Mhm.
seen us kind of through these different iterations of ourself. You know what I
Right.
mean? As we
Right.
evolve.
Right.
However, sometimes I find what happens, and I used to struggle with this a lot more than I do now, just because I've become more aware of what's going on. But a lot of times, for example, like your parents or like your closest friends will look at you in the same way, like you're the same person when you were like really tight in the early days.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? Like they can't necessarily see your evolved self anymore. And they kind of hold you in this crystallized version of how you were as a teenager, or how
Mhm.
you were as like in your early 20s. But like, as you get older, you hopefully are growing and maturing. And sometimes like I can, especially when I was younger, I used to get a little frustrated with my parents because I felt like I was never seen as the person I'm becoming and the person I've become. And I was
Yeah.
always being held in this version of myself that is no longer there. Do you know what I'm getting at? Do
Yeah,
you
I
feel
think
that?
in my, I guess, stereo perspective is that most people, how can I explain it? They get stuck in this idea of what fits in their journey without
Mm-hmm.
letting space for it to evolve. So, especially for like, I think parents, a lot of their mindset is stuck in like the kid years of their children.
Mm-hmm.
So their mind is like, this is how I want them to be, because when they grow up, they're going to leave the nest. I got to
Mm-hmm.
shift my nurturing to a different element,
Yeah.
like more of a support than like a coddling type
Yeah.
situation. So the love is not lost, just in a different way. So I guess how some people get stuck in like a certain age range, like
Mm-hmm.
their mindset, because they feel this is where they peak. Sometimes I think it's the same thing with people connected with people. Like if you're ever evolving, either they get nervous or anxious about it because they don't know how to interact with it, or they're not willing to shift their perspective to help meet what's going on with your perspective, and like
Yeah.
mesh the journeys together, man.
For sure. And so that's why it's really important to have like an objective, unbiased person. Everyone has their bias in some level, but it's not attributed to like a past relationship with
Yeah.
you. And
Right.
so for you, like studying to be a therapist, I mean, you are preparing yourself to play this role for people. And I think in a time where, I think there's always been a crisis in mental health, for a long time. And especially we're seeing it now but people are becoming more open to talking about going to therapy and getting help and being able to recognize when they can't do it on their own. And I think that is a really important and beautiful thing, and for you on your journey to be a facilitator of healing for people in this way. um, and I think it's important that you like really come to terms with your own healing journey, like I think of the Carl Jung and like this idea of like the wounded healer of souls, it's like a healer
Right.
has to heal their own wounds before they can be there to hold space with others, and they have to go through their dark night of the soul kind of thing, this archetype of like the psyche, you know what I'm saying? And
Most definitely for me is
yeah,
like I was talking about earlier, I was definitely was my own art therapist, but it wasn't like licensed. You know what I'm saying?
yep,
Was,
hmm,
I was healing myself through my art and just understanding what is going on with my brain. Like what is all this I'm dealing with? What are these symbols that I'm creating? All these different things. And then eventually I was like, I need to get this cultivated to a space where it doesn't get out of hand.
yeah,
I was like, let me just settle down and go to therapy.
yeah,
I've been in therapy now, it's going on 7 years, and then I just started my schooling 2 years ago. So
wow.
I made sure, like you said, to start my journey before I wanted to step in to help others because I didn't want to be a broken element trying to help other people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I'm
man.
not saying I'm fully healed by any means. It's a journey to continue to
Exactly.
heal parts of yourself that you're figuring out over time because it's so life is complex. It's not like an easy thing to figure out. So every day I learn something. I'll get taught a technical term through my teaching in school, and then I'll go to my therapist and kind of like work with it. Like, okay, I learned this term
Yeah.
that happened in my past as a kid or my 20s, whatever. Let's talk about it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, man.
I want to make sure I'm the best I can be. So when it's time for me to come in, I can mold all the things I've learned into the way I feel is best to help the people that I need to help without
Yeah,
being
man.
very clinical or like too overwhelming. Because even for me, I want to come dressed like this. You know what I'm saying? I want
Yeah.
in a space where they're comfortable. They don't feel overwhelmed. It's not like you're being dictated or anything like that. I just want you to be able to fully express, but also be as comfortable as possible to get your ideas out. I'm just on the back end, just uh, I guess it's just a watcher of just
Yeah.
get this figured out together. But if you need
Yeah.
help, I'm here to help you
It's
too.
like a space holder, it's like you're holding that space, and at the same time you have knowledge of the maps
Yeah,
of those space, of the psyche, of the soul, of the spirit, like of how consciousness has to evolve out of its old patterns that are not serving it. You know what I mean? Like
right,
we've
right,
all we've all inherited so many behavioral patterns of thinking. And a lot of times many of those patterns are not helping us or useful for us, but it's hard to break those cycles. And so someone like you or like your own therapist for yourself, like holds that space in a way where you can begin to see those patterns like outside of them and then
right.
be able to dismantle them and create better versions of them, I guess, so to
Most
speak.
definitely, most
It's
definitely.
like holding that space. But to your point, like, like you said, like your healing journey is not over. Like,
Mhm.
and I think that's such an important point for people to realize, like, there is no like end point to our growth. I feel like, I feel like there are always deeper levels in which we can heal ourselves and become more of a conduit and an openness for others' healings. You know what I mean? Like when we start to let go of our attachments to the way we think things should be or are, and we are open to whatever becomes revealed that we hadn't seen yet. I love that phrase that people say, like, you don't know what you don't know.
Right,
And you know
right.
what I mean? And I feel like
Yeah,
the more you're on this journey of like expanding your consciousness and becoming more open, the more you realize you don't know shit, you know?
yeah, yeah. Most
It's
definitely.
like,
It's
yeah,
it's crazy to even think about because when I say you're constantly healing, once you get into a space where you're like really tuned in, that I guess realm of like healing becomes very spiritual. And then it can turn into unfortunately like an egotistical space where like you
Mhm.
feel like you're better than other people because you've been doing your work. You got
Yeah.
you gotta bring it down and realize like this is you. You're just one human. You got elements that are good, but you're not better than anybody else.
Exactly.
Everybody's going through different things, and I think that's one thing that gets kind of shaky in the spiritual realm of like art is like some people think, oh, because I've did this much work that I'm better than you. No, no.
Mhm.
Everybody unlocks certain things at certain times, and we're all learning from each other and figure things out as we go along. And we can be a collective more than a categorized space. You know what I'm saying?
Amen, dude. Amen, man. Like, because the ego is always it's a tricky component to our minds. It's always looking for a way to hijack something great
Right,
and make it
right.
its own, you know?
But
It's sneaky like that.
I think I've learned, I guess, in the last, I want to say 10 years, when people say kill the ego, um, for me, I was like, yeah, yeah. And then eventually I was like, no, don't kill the ego, cultivate it. Because if we didn't have
Yeah.
ego, we wouldn't have the strength to like go talk to that girl or
Hmm.
have that nervous thing to like eventually meet up with a whole bunch of people you don't want to meet up with to like go to a party, like, or like just, or push you through depression. You need
Yeah.
to go to like help you move through things
Yeah,
as
man.
part of your consciousness. Yeah, yeah,
The ego, yeah, the ego is like I said this before in a previous podcast, but it's so good and so important. It's this phrase like the ego is an incredible servant, but a terrible master. You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
it's there to help us. Like, if you didn't have an ego, you would just be floating in bliss through the
Right,
streets and you get hit by a bus.
right,
Boom.
right.
Like, I forget who
Awareness.
said it. Someone said you need enough ego not to walk in the middle of the street and get hit by a car. You know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's important. You know, it's super important to play this game of life, but
Mhm.
like, it can, if it's driving the car, it's going to take you down some rough roads. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean? It's got
yeah.
to be, it's like a tool in your toolbox, you know, but it's not the whole, it's not the creation. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right, right,
And so that's, I think, one of the trickier parts too, like you're saying, with the, when you get into spirituality, there's this phrase a lot of people throw around, like spiritual bypassing, or kind of using spiritual experience or knowledge as a way to bolster the ego, as opposed to a way to harness it and put it in its healthy, proper role.
right.
And so you see a lot of that, and you especially see a lot of that in art. You know, I mean, as artists, we have big egos we got to deal with. And this idea of competitiveness in art is something that makes me very ill to think
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
which is one of the impetuses behind why I even started this whole project, is to create a sense of collectiveness and community and shared information, to be able to create these kinds of connections and see that we're all like on this journey working for the same goal of like growing the collective consciousness, you
Right,
know, and
right,
art is our tool, is our medium
right.
to do that. But you know, it's in the capitalist game, it's you know, eat or be eaten kind of thing, and dog eat dog kind of world, like what they say. And I think all that is a bunch of BS. It's a construct that we've just accepted, and I think it's up to us to come together and start to envision new paradigms, you
Yeah,
know, new idioms that speak to where we really should go. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
Yeah, because yeah, don't get me wrong. Like we all want to, especially as creatives, we all want to live through our art. But
Definitely.
I think once there's different categories and layers when it comes to money, the ego can get very shifty, man. So,
Hmm. Oh
but
yeah,
if we step back and realize we're all like trying to hopefully just gain space and understand that we're blessed enough to get our thoughts out in a very unique and beautiful way, that can be more powerful than the money. Because
for
I'm,
sure.
I'm not trying to be I guess hippie about it, but money is like exchange of energy.
Yes,
We are the currency. Because
definitely.
without the gift, there will be no money to exchange. So
Mm,
we're just trading this piece of paper or coins or whatever um, to like a trade, a trade. Like
exactly, man.
I'll give you this beautiful experience of something I've been through. Thank you for the money so I can pay rent. eat some food,
Mhm.
maybe go to a fine dine restaurant. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly, man. Yeah, there's a balance, like everything is has to find its sort of dynamic form of balance. Like
Yeah,
I think when I look at the landscape of the world that we're creating right now, for better and worse, I think I see that there's room for everybody to succeed.
yeah, for
You know
sure.
what I mean? Like it's not a zero sum game. It's like there's room for everybody to find that sustainability and build the life that they want to live. But there's a lot of obstacles out there that have been put in place, a lot of them intentionally, a lot of them unconsciously.
Mm,
And I think collectively, what we're seeing right now in our landscape, especially in America, is like we are having to sift through a lot of the shit.
mm,
And I'm hoping that we can find some wisdom as we move through this process,
right.
you know?
I think yeah, like our art can be catalyst of change without us realizing it. Just because as much as people might take art as more like gallery work and I guess like things like that, art's everywhere from advertising to how the
Mhm.
buildings are made and all that. We can the way things are made and seen shift how people act. So I
Yes.
think if we're more tapped into that space and like I said, coming together as a collective and just start just shifting things slowly, I think there'll be change in the world, hopefully, in the near future, man. Because it's been a lot of chaos since the pandemic,
Yeah, man.
and a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of started unraveling, and we got to like start healing people.
Yeah, man.
It starts with comfortability. So I think just things like looking at art and things like that, just to slowly get them to want to be open to create change for themselves will be the best bet instead of jumping in their face like go to therapy because that becomes very almost like bullying a little bit or taxing because some people might add a bad experience with therapy. Some people
Mhm.
are scared to unpack too early. But if you can, even though people don't realize it, a lot of times people can look at art and that could just start shifting them or thinking certain things because the way it looks.
Yeah.
Those colors can bring back a memory. That visual can make them be like something just clicks where they're like, oh man, like I do need to get help.
Yeah.
So it just we're powerful. We're alchemists, if you want to
Mhm.
say that in some forms of fashion. And we just gotta be conscious and organized on how we create, but also freeing in our ideas so things don't get diluted in the world of like you said, capitalism and
Mhm.
just being your purest form, so other people can be their purest form.
Yeah, man, that's such a good point. It's like you got to live the example,
Yeah,
you're trying to set, that you want to see. And it's hard work, it's not like a pristine road. It's
right,
always going to be challenging, but there's a level of like perspective, I think, that you can cultivate that helps you traverse the difficult terrain that sometimes you come across. And art is sort of can be a process of navigation through
mm,
those terrains, but it can also be like a sign to say, like, take a left here, don't go right.
right,
I've been to
right,
the right, it's not good, but the left is
right,
actually all right,
right.
so like it can serve as like a signpost too to help, point people in toward a trajectory that could be helpful for them in their own healing, even if they're not aware of it. I think a lot of things happen within any form of art, like even like you're talking about like advertising, architecture, the design, the clothes wear, the way that we express ourselves in the street, out in the world, art hanging on walls, like it's speaking to many layers of the psyche and of consciousness, and it can be very subtle, for better or worse,
Right.
subliminal messaging and advertising and television and all this sort of programming that surrounds us in our world. Like it can nurture the bad seeds as well as
Right.
nurture the good seeds
Right.
inside of us. And
Mm,
both seeds exist,
right.
and so I think as artists, at least the kind of artist I want to be, and it seems the kind of artist you want to be, is the one who nurtures those good seeds, those seeds of
Right.
awakening, the seeds of consciousness. And that is a beautiful, interesting process that not going to show its results overnight. You know what I
No,
mean?
because you have to live life. There's nobody's perfect.
Yeah,
So
man.
there's gonna be moments and times where I slip and fall, but I made the space now where I can step back and be like, why did I do that?
Hmm.
Kind of reflect on it, like what was the reason for that? And then I can either transmute that into like meditation or talking to a friend or talking to my therapist or put in my art.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
but that's what I'm trying to create too. Is like when I become a art therapist, I can let them know like, don't beat yourself up. You're on a consistent and continuous journey of learning yourself, but also giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
Pat yourself on the back and know that you're doing all right. This is just part of like life. We're all just figuring it out. We're all just
Yeah.
going through like through life, just trying to find our purpose or our alignment, whatever it needs to be in this realm, and just understand that you're gonna be okay. You know?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think sometimes that just letting someone know that right there
Mm,
can change everything for them.
mm,
Like just as, holding that space and just letting them know genuinely with your open heart that like it's going to be all right,
right. Right.
and you're going to make through these things and we're growing all together. And,
Mm,
that can automatically help people feel less alone. Cause I do think we speak, it's, people talk about this all the time, at least in various forms of media. You hear this conversation happening more and more just about the increasing sense of isolation that arises in our culture. And it's so paradoxical to the fact of our deep interconnectivity through these virtual networks we've created. It's like we are more connected and yet and more disconnected in the same moment than ever before.
mm,
And so, but hearing from human to human, like from your voice in resonance, in space, in time, in that moment, you're going to be all right,
right.
and everything's going to be okay, can change everything for somebody, So that's an incredible message.
Yeah, I think like designing your own story is more important than trying to compare your story to other people. I think that's
Hmm.
what a lot is happening with the digital media that we have now with like TikTok and certain YouTubes like vlogging all the time. I'm not saying these things are bad, but you're definitely comparing your story to their story. Because even you might be having a good time, but then you'll see somebody else having a better time. And you're like, am I up to par with what I need to be doing? So now you
Yeah,
do extra stuff to match them instead of living your journey. Your journey can be more powerful than theirs, but you don't know what's going on behind closed doors with their story. They could be,
yeah,
or they could just be doing it for the camera, and then when they get home, they might be depressed.
exactly.
You don't
You,
know. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's like your point you made earlier. It's like you just never know what someone's dealing with, and like you said, like offer them grace,
Mm,
and compassion and the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean? Is like it's seemingly very simple to do, but for whatever reasons, like our egos like have this feeling of always wanting to be right and to know
right.
everything. It's like I would say like what describes the mechanism of the ego is control. It's got to control everything, and like that's like a form of how it builds its sense of security and safety. But I think sometimes like that letting go of control is where actually you discover a deeper form of nurturing and
Mm,
safety and like the grander scheme of the cosmic reality,
yeah.
of time. And it's yeah, the comparison game is a deadly one, dude.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because you can't understand fully what someone's story really is. Like we can create like the highlight reel on Instagram. No, that's easy.
Right. Right.
But it doesn't say much about really who that person is in their depth,
Mm,
you know. And you
mm,
have to realize that too. But in a world where like we magnetize and value successful people, like you know what I mean, people who are in the highest levels of success, we're like, and usually that success is defined I mean, I would define success differently than the mainstream culture does, as I'm sure
Mhm.
you would. But in the mainstream, it seems that the definition of success seems to relate to material success,
Right.
to money and notoriety,
Mm.
and it's a slippery slope.
Mm. Yeah. Hmm. You make some great points, man. You just got me thinking, man. So
I know, dude. It's a
yeah,
slippery slope. So, having this process where we can be conscious, where you can step back and be like, what's going on? Like you were saying, like, what's going on with myself? And like meditate on it and really contemplate, sort of like why that happened the way it did. Like
right,
why did I respond to my neighbor in that way over the such and such? Like why?
right,
Like what was
right.
happening inside, and like being able to self-reflect. I mean, that is a muscle we should all be able to flex.
It's very important. I think through my self-reflection, I've been able to like hone in and like kind of like tame my social anxiety because I was like, why am I getting it? I know it's energetically in one element, but it's also what I've created stories that don't exist
Hmm.
in my head. And you can't stop that. It's going to happen. But
Yeah,
if you just get comfortable with uncomfortability, things can be more powerful than you think. Like
for sure.
instead of being like having all the ideas, who's going to be in there, why they're going to be in there, are they going to be looking at me? Just be like, all right, they're going to be in there, and just walk
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
It'll slowly fall off of you. Like you'll
Yeah.
feel anxiety, but then eventually, most of those people are not even paying attention to you. They might look at
Exactly.
you for like half a second, they're like, oh, and then go back to who they're talking to. So you just got.
Exactly.
I think that's what helped me a lot. Just not trying to create a space where I'm with people, going out places by myself. So when I'm with people, it's easy. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because if you go out places by yourself, you really got to deal with it by yourself. It's like
Hmm.
you're in the thick of it. There's you're going to a restaurant. Just go in. It's gonna be
Yeah.
loud. It's gonna be everything. Just you're gonna get all the feelings. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
Anxiety, anxiousness, happiness, excitement, all of it. You're gonna be overwhelmed. But then just find your spot to sit, talk to the bartender, the server, whatever, and just get your food. It's gonna calm down.
Exactly.
It's gonna calm down. Then you're gonna be like, why was I so anxious, man? What was the point of me just overwhelming
Yeah.
myself in the crib for 2 hours when I could have left an hour ago? You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so.
No, it's interesting, like this idea that things will change. Like that's something I feel like we can always rest on, is that the fact of infinite change.
Mm.
And that even in a moment of anxiety and nervousness, that's going to pass too. And I think what makes it tricky is when you attach to those feelings so much and identify with them so much that they kind of like take you for this ride that you didn't really sign up to go on.
Right.
Um, you mentioned meditation. I'm curious if you have like a formal meditation practice, but I think about this a lot in terms of like meditative instructions that you get in formal meditation practices, is shifting how you're identifying with what's happening. You know what I mean? Like stepping into that witness consciousness where you can feel the energy of the anxiety, but that doesn't mean, and you can acknowledge it, there's anxiety, but
Mm.
there's not like such an identification with it that there isn't that spaciousness there. And to me, that has been such an important thing to cultivate, is like this sense of space between the consciousness that witnesses, that's aware, that knows they're aware in these
Right.
moments, and the feeling, the sensation, the thought streams themselves. Is this
Mm.
something that's been a part of your journey, like doing like mindfulness meditation or cultivating like formal meditative practice, or has it become sort of your own process that you've sort of created and cultivated over the years?
I think it's become my own process. When I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, I would ride the train to my house, and my house is kind of far from the train. So either I would listen to music and walk home, and I think that was very meditative for me, just to like walk and look around because the area I lived was very like foresty and like
Hmm.
like a lot of like greenery and stuff like that. So I kind of just like took in the environment and just listened to music. Or also I wouldn't listen to music and kind of just reflect in my mind.
Yeah.
How was your day? Well, how you doing, man? Just talking to myself. You know what I'm saying? Might say that it's weird, but I think that helps just to like give yourself space for yourself. Like, you
For
doing all
sure.
right?
Yeah.
or even now, like a lot of times before I go to sleep, I kind of like lay on the bed and just almost empty thought,
Mhm.
just sit there and just whatever pops in, just like give it space to either like go in or out, or just kind of like, okay, what is that about?
Mhm.
Okay, that's that. Okay, and just kind of like I guess let my mind just filter a little bit because
Yeah.
I think if you don't do that, that's why you go in and out of sleep because your mind is just constantly going. So to
Mhm.
give yourself time to like just filter through your day, especially if you're like out all day, just like
Yeah.
lay down and just let things pop in and out. Oh, that was cool. That I didn't really like that going on. Oh, yeah, that was interesting. Just let things just go in and out. And I
Yeah.
think it's very meditative just to like let those thoughts be thoughts.
Yeah.
I just and I think there's a study on this, but I'm pretty sure like all our thoughts are not our own, so we
Mhm.
can't harbor on thinking on everything. Oh, why did I think about that? You gotta like thoughts. They're just thoughts. As hard, it might be hard to like really like get into that space to think about it, but we're collective consciousness. Like we're all in this as a one.
Yes.
I believe so. Some thoughts might be random as hell, and you're like, why did I think
Like,
this?
where the hell did that come
Yeah, yeah,
from?
but it might be your neighbor. You know what I'm saying? It might
Yeah.
be from way down somewhere else. You don't
Man.
know. So you just got to make space to be like, all right, oh, that was just thought. This is what I'm thinking now. Okay, cool. Just let it be a process.
Yeah.
Process of understanding and just you're your own experiment, pretty much.
Yes.
You're just figuring it out, but also you dictate also what you want to do.
Mhm.
You got to make space for that and just be present as much as possible in the understanding of your soul, your true essence.
Yes,
I think
man.
that that'll make you the best person you could be in the good or bad, your duality of yourself, man. So
Yeah. No, that's so beautiful, man. And it's so important. Like, and I like how like you're illustrating that process for yourself. And
mm,
the thought that came to my mind as you're doing that is like that sense of curiosity toward your thoughts. Like this
yeah,
sort of like loving, compassionate curiosity. Like, where did that come from? Like not being so like judgmental over the thoughts
right,
and attributing like you're also pointing out like the thoughts don't equal you. You know what I mean?
right,
Like you are not your thoughts. The thoughts are this other thing that's happening through you that you can witness, that you can grab hold of. But ultimately, like when you have enough space in the mind where the thoughts aren't so inundating and unraveling that you can't even orient yourself. But when you have enough of that spaciousness, then you have the power to choose which thought to apply and which one let it flow by, you know? And that's like the choice we have, you know, like you can't necessarily choose what kind of thoughts you're going to have because like you're pointing out, and I would agree with this too, like thoughts are like existent and they come through us through various means. Like they don't belong to us, we didn't create them, they're existent, but we have a choice to implement them and use them. And so like developing that spaciousness in the mind where the thoughts don't just overwhelm you but they become just stimulus. A lot of Zen Buddhists, you know, refer to thoughts in the same way you look at a cloud in the
right,
sky or a bird flying through the sky. It's like the sky is the mind, is the consciousness, and the
mm,
clouds and the birds and the planes and all that, those are like forms that are flying in and out of consciousness. And no matter what those clouds may be, you know, violent storms or clear skies, like the sky is still present, you
right,
know,
yeah,
holding those things. But that's a practice. It's hard to do at first because we've been habituated to identify so much with our thinking patterns as being who we are,
right,
and judging ourselves based on the quality of thoughts we have. But once you can let go of that story and you can shift your relationship to your thoughts, it it changes the whole game, you
oh
know?
yeah,
So I love like you're talking about at night as a way to just let it filter out, you know, like to let it's like it's almost like sometimes I visualize like when I'm meditating that I have like these two doors on the sides of my temples or windows,
yeah,
and
yeah,
all I do is just open them. And
yeah,
I just let whatever comes through find its way out on the other side. And in between, I don't try to hold on to it. I don't try to grab it. I just
right.
let it flow through.
right.
And that's
And I
been
have
really
this
important.
I have this phrase that I came up with, I wanna say maybe 12, 13 years ago, and it stuck with me. I say, "I'm a soul in a shell with a story to tell." That's my little phrase, man. So,
Yeah.
it helped me push through, especially in the height of when my mental health was kinda shaky.
Mhm.
It kept me grounded,
Yeah.
'cause I was like, "What is going on? Like, why am I getting these visions? Why am I hearing these things?"
Mhm.
And I needed to have some form of understanding, and that phrase kept me, grounded in addition to my art because I was able to, like, take that phrase and translate it into, like, making art. It
Mhm.
became very powerful, for me just as I built my career because I would have shows at the beginning of, um, I guess my career just doing shows and stuff, like, galleries wouldn't really put my artwork because it was, like, a mixture of, like, I guess, street art and just different elements, abstract and simple,
Yeah.
that. So I would have, art shows at skate shops because they resonated with me. But the cool thing about it, people would walk in, it'd be like a 10-year-old kid, but then a 6-year-old person would come in. They both would like just stare at my work. I'm like, okay, there's something going on that I've
Yeah.
created that is beyond me. I'm doing it, but that's my story is resonating with people just in their way.
Yeah.
It's simple as even though they don't know what's going on or what I'm going through, it makes sense to them. Um, and that really pushed me to keep just figuring out me as a person, molding myself to the best person I can be, but also telling my story through art because
Yeah.
it's impactful and healing me and keeping me going, but also is resonating with other people in a certain way that they want to buy art from me, which is awesome because
Yeah.
people don't have to, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
I remember the old guy that came in. He just walked through the skate shop and he just stood there a strong 15 minutes. I had all the pieces up, and he's like, "Oh, these for sale." I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "How much?" I was like, "I haven't really truly priced them." He's like, "I'll be back," and he came back with like a very hefty check. And he's like, "I'm taking these down." I'm like, "Okay."
Wow,
Yeah,
man.
so like I was like that was one of the most, especially like during that time I was going through it, man. So that just let me know like you, like we talked about earlier, you'll be okay.
Yep.
Um, just, just keep going. Your art is your foundation. And
Mhm.
I'm lucky I stayed on my path because I know what I've been through is going to help me help other people get to where they need
Yep.
to be. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely, dude. Definitely. It's because and because what it does, I feel, is when you're a human who's really been through it,
Mhm.
who's gone through those dark times and those confusing times and have found a way to emerge out of them stronger, more connected, more conscious. Like you're holding an energy resonance
Mhm.
um, that people can feel. And that in itself, that signature of your energy is going to help them be more comfortable opening,
Mhm.
and trusting because you don't want to traverse a terrain that with someone who's never been there. That's what's the
Right,
point? Like now you're both, it's like the blind leading the blind.
right,
You know
right.
what I mean? Like you want to be in this process of healing, especially when you're engaging with another person to help facilitate that. Someone who deeply has been there,
Right.
has been to these dark places, has been in these confusing moments where their sense of identity was unraveling on them and
Mm.
but yet found their way through, that's I mean,
I was
it's
for
deep.
me, I was blessed enough, like even in the hardest times, in the midst of it, I guess universe or whatever you want to call God, gave me space to be aware of what was going on. So I
Hmm.
didn't get too lost in it because some people without help or just like people being on their side, they lose themselves fully, or
Yeah.
they don't know how to like tap in back to this reality. So I've always had this thing where I knew what was going on, I just didn't understand why.
Hmm.
So I got within that space, I did like a lot of research to like what's going on with me. You know what I'm saying? I went through that pattern
Yeah.
of like trying to self-diagnose or whatever you want to call it, but I didn't go to the space of like diagnose myself fully. I didn't go to
Yeah.
Google and say I went more the route of like understanding the mind. So I started looking up books by Carl Jung. I started
Yes.
doing like spirituality seminars through like YouTube and stuff. Just like, what is this? You know what I'm saying? What
Hmm.
I'm not lost, but I'm different. And if I
Yeah.
tell people, they might see me in a different light. So I got to keep some of this stuff to myself. But I
Hmm.
definitely want to figure out what's going on because I'm present, but also there's certain things that are happening around me that um I can't really explain to other people fully.
Yeah.
Them putting full judgment on, even if they said it didn't judge, without me having like a vocabulary or how to articulate to them the right way, they can go behind my back and be like, Jesus, kind of, what's something going on with him? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to figure it out kind of a little bit for myself. So I think that actually helped me also create a foundation because then also I would see certain things and it was in my art. And I'm like, okay, like I'm on the right path. Like this,
Yeah.
I just gotta like cultivate it. I gotta just make space for myself. But this is before I knew about therapy, but not in the sense of like go for myself. But
Yeah.
well, I knew enough to like art was making me keep everything in control.
Hmm.
And just having like good, solid parents and friends who understood I was just a very sociable introvert.
Hmm.
So that they never judged if I left the party too early or anything like that. And just having like a solid crew of friends, understanding just G is G. But then as I went through my healing journey in these last couple of years and kind of told people what was going on, they're like, "Oh, but like we're so proud of you because how did you even
Yeah.
do that while you
Yeah.
were working?" I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
At the same time, like I did it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing, man. It's inspiring, I'm sure, especially for those people that are close to you. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's so tough to be dealing with things that you feel like you can't really communicate with others because they just can't understand
Right.
what the experiences that you were having were like. And
Right.
but through your art is a way to communicate.
Right.
It's a way to communicate in some level, like what's going on with you, you know what I mean? And then like you're saying, like how you're seeing the sync up between certain things happening interiorly and then certain things that come through unconsciously in your art. That's
Mm,
always a powerful thing.
right.
I love Carl Jung and this notion of like synchronicity, like
Mm,
where like these moments happen on it, sometimes it happens daily or every other week or even just on a whim, where it's just like the alignment of like the moment, the thought, the experience are like all echoing each other. Do
right.
you know what I mean?
Right.
And
Right.
anytime I have those experiences, to me, it's like a sign of like you're on the right path. It's like
Right.
ding, welcome,
Right.
welcome back, you know, you're moving in the right direction. This is a signpost to say like keep going,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah, Carl Jung's work has been really influential for me too. Are you familiar with Joseph Campbell and like how he was inspired by Carl Jung to look at like mythology, like look at,
No.
oh man, this is
Mm.
something you're probably going to love.
Definitely send me some books or whatever when we get
Yeah, he's got some really, really big, sort of well-known books for people who are interested in this stuff. It's like well-known, relative,
mm,
but like he has this a lot of his work is around the hero's journey and like the archetypes of the hero's journey and how we see that in mythological stories across the globe, across time, which
mm,
is really your story,
mm,
Julius. It's our story. It's everyone's real story. We're all the hero in our own story, and the
mm.
hero's got to go slay the dragon. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. Right.
Got to go deep into the cave and slay the dragon,
Right.
confront the
Right.
ego, and tame it and put it
Mm,
in its place, so to speak.
mm,
And it's really fascinating. Like what Joseph Campbell did is he looked at, the mythology of like the Indus Valley and the Vedic culture, looked at
mm,
mythology of the Aboriginal culture, what's happening in East Asian culture, and what's happening in various parts of Africa, like West African or East African cultures, and like these stories that they're telling, even, in like Eastern European or South American, like he basically mapped out the mythology of the entire globe and
right.
revealed that everyone is telling the same story. And
Mm,
it's really fascinating. And he was inspired a lot by Carl Jung and thinking about the archetypes of the unconscious. And
Right.
so I like to think about these things a lot, these stories we're telling. I mean, you were speaking to this idea of like having, what you said, it's a soul in the shell with a story to tell. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like
Right. Right.
we all are telling this, our individual stories, but at the same time telling this big collective story, you know? And I think one of the symptoms of our current cultural condition right now, the symptom of like ignorance and separation and ego identity taking the forefront, I think relates to our divorce from our ancestral wisdom traditions and from our history, our deep history. And I see this resurgence of consciousness, spirituality, even like psychedelic experiences, um, as being like sort of the beginning point of tapping back into something we've forgotten,
Right.
about where we came from, like who we really are, and what's really encoded in our DNA, on the deepest level. Do you ever think about these things too, about like ancestral wisdom and like how it's trying to find a voice to speak through us in these trying times?
Definitely so. We came from a lineage. So like we're it's all through us. You know what I'm saying? Like our DNA is from our parents, or our parents, or parents, however far we came from.
Yeah.
We're gonna have elements of pain that we don't understand, elements of joy we're excited to have, but don't fully understand. So I think it's all like intertwined.
Hmm.
Just like I guess decoding certain realms, if that makes sense. They're still, I guess they're, in my opinion, they're still around, but just not in the visual form. But
Hmm.
if they didn't get things figured out, we're still part of them. So we're doing part of the work through our journey, to help the whole lineage, like you said,
Yes.
come
Yeah.
together and create space of like healing. I think
Hmm.
that's the number one thing. Love, compassion, and healing are some of the most powerful elements that we have in this world, and we need to take time to like appreciate those more, uh,
Yeah.
not just for like benefit, which love can be a very trying word. I think love takes what's the word? Love takes I can't think of the word right now. Love takes words. Oh, but it takes commitment. There we go. It
Yeah.
takes
Yeah.
love takes
Hmm.
commitment over just like just saying it. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
If you love somebody, it's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be moments you be like, I don't like this person, but you can still
Hmm.
love them.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
uh, so is commitment within the compassion, and your purpose, and your truth. Finding your truths that works for you, man, is some of the most powerful things we can do. Yeah,
Definitely, man. Yeah, like the term love gets thrown around so much, and
yeah,
a lot of times it gets roped into this notion of like romantic love. But like when I think of what love is, which I think is really undefinable in a lot of ways, but like there are attributes to it that are when you see true love, you know what I mean, real deep love. It's a way of being. It's like an energetic like signature or like way of being, but it's also that way of being in the form of an action. You
right,
know what I mean? It's like love is an action. It's like you express your love through how you do everything, really,
mm,
that's how you can really express your love for someone. Of course, we can say beautiful words, of love, and those are great. But I think love is something that is shown,
right,
through the way you carry yourself, through the way you act in the world. And I see love everywhere I go, man. I see it
mm,
all the time. And I think everything that is sort of like controlling this, cultural like place of fear and anxiety and hate is all a distraction. It's like it makes it feel like that's all there is. But like you can see love everywhere you go. Well, I go for a walk right now in my neighborhood and I'm going to see a million examples of love all around me. But you also have to have the eyes to see it. You know what I mean? To recognize it. And usually that stems from a clear mind, you
right,
know,
right.
a clear mind that's not attached to its own idea about the way things are, you know? And I just think that I keep coming back to this idea of storytelling, and right here, this whole conversation we're having right now, we're telling a story,
Right.
and we're all a part of it, and I think the more that we can bring our stories together and realize that, like, each piece, like my story and your story, belong perfectly together in the bigger story, and we can appreciate each other on that level. It creates the possibility to build a future that we can't even imagine right now. That's just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because
Beyond what we could ever conceive.
we have different perspectives, so we're both giving each other information. So we're getting information stored through our conversation that will shift how reality is.
Definitely.
And that's powerful. So every conversation gives you more, I believe, more awareness and more empathy and openness, because you're getting all these different ways of thinking in
Yeah.
your brain. So judgment hopefully becomes a side note. You're able
Mhm.
to you're going to judge. People who say they don't judge, you're lying. We all judge.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we're in our natural fashion, we're going to judge because we want comfortability in our story. So we're gonna, if that person looks a certain way, we're gonna be like, they're gonna create an idea, they blah blah blah. But then once you talk to them, that's when you can pull back the layers and say, okay, they're not what I thought they were, and you can shift accordingly. Like, they might be down the line, but you decide that as you get to know them. You don't
Yeah.
predict or whatever, and then as you build, you decide, okay, they can rock in my story, or they can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Like, well, judgments, it's just like what we were talking about earlier with thoughts. Like, it's another thought,
mm,
and it's a natural thought. Like, like we need to have some form of judgment around our environment to make a decision to, so for even just like base survival, right? Like,
yeah,
if we
but
just
yeah,
think
fight or
about it
flight.
from,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like if we just think about like it from like an evolutionary or biological perspective, like we have to be able to discern and judge whether this is safe or not safe. You
Right,
know, we have to
right,
be able to make a judgment about, like, is that a bird rustling in the bush or is that a lion rustling in the
right,
bush?
right,
Like, how
right,
do
right.
I, so like judgment is encoded as a part of like how we operate in the world. But like, back to what we've talked about earlier, it's like the identification with those thoughts or with those judgments is the game changers. When you cannot identify with them and notice them, oh, there's a judgment, I'm judging this person, then that judgment doesn't do harm. You know what I mean? It's when the judgment is unconscious that it does harm.
Mm,
And I think we need more than ever to move in a space where we can stop hurting each other,
right,
you know?
right.
And I think that begins with us individually, taking responsibility for our own consciousness, for our own evolution, and to be able to reach out for help, you know,
Yeah,
when we need it. People like you, man, I know that, I'm super grateful to know you in this way,
respect,
even for an
respect.
hour, like, and to get to know you even virtually, and hopefully continue to get to know you, because I like think that the journey you're on, not only as an artist, but as a healer, as like, the wounded healer of souls, you know what I mean? Like that
Mhm.
shaman almost for others. Like when you're ready and the time's right and you're going to be there to hold space, you're going to help a lot of people on their journeys, and that to be able to commit yourself to that kind of path is really inspiring, because I know you'll continue to make your own work, but also on the other wing of your practice is going to be to hold space and help people on their journeys, and just appreciate your voice, man, and appreciate you taking time today to talk with me and share your wisdom and share your thoughts. And for everybody out there, you got to check out the infamous Jean-Claude on Instagram. He's got a
Oh, thank you,
website with his
man.
work. You got to check out. He does a lot of album art. So any of you artists out there who need album artwork, whatever, anything, just be in touch with what he's up to. I have all the links in the show notes. Julius G, infamous Jean-Claude, I appreciate you so much. Appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to connecting with you more in the future, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you for the opportunity, man.
Yeah, for sure. Have a good one, man. Peace.
You too.
Thank you all so much for tuning into this episode of Concerning the Spiritual and Art. If you like what we're doing here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you can stay in touch and in tune with all the amazing offerings that we're going to be bringing to this channel. Thanks again for all your support. Super grateful. And yeah, excited to bring more content your way. Peace, y'all.